Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
The missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and advised that the mother had went through a wall, came home, now they can't find her.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Once I told a lie, and I told my family, I had to keep lying.
What's your, is it deemed?
We haven't cleared anybody.
Hey everybody. Hi Butterfly Kisses. Hey Debbie Fox. So glad you made it. Johnny, can you hear me? And did you watch what I sent you at the 20-minute mark? Hi Pointer Lover. So good to see you. Stormy, thanks for becoming a member. Okay, guys. I saw Johnny was in here earlier. I think he was, yes, handing out drinks to everyone while we get settled. Oh my gosh, I just realized I still have my frownies on. If you guys don't know anything about frownies, let me tell you. They're like the best wrinkle patch. Anti-aging. It's like a cast and it holds your forehead in place. So I just wear them at night and before I go live. Hey Jay, let me know if you would like to join. If you're not, no worries. I'm just happy you guys are all here. Adrian, Ellie. So I'm pretty much going to do the same format that I did last Friday for like the Idaho case. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I sent those links. Pointer Lover, they're amazing. I've been using them for years now. They've been out since, I want to say the 50s or 60s. They used to be like an old Hollywood like beauty secret, but they're very, very, very like popular nowadays because of the Botox that everyone's getting. But, you know, that's risky and pricey, and I'm still in my 30s. So those frownies literally just like hold it almost retrains your muscles too in your forehead. Like you don't realize how expressive you are, and actually things get kind of set. This kind of unsets it and resets it. Hi, everyone loves Angel Eyes. They're so good, Pointer Lover. And if you join the subscription where they send it to you automatically, like you can set the different months that they'll send it. I think I do mine like every 3 months or something. You're locked in place of the price. So when they change their price, like over time with inflation and whatnot, you'll be locked in at the price that you started. So that's cool, I think. Okay, so anyways, while we wait for Jay, when he's ready, this is what I have in mind. I'm going to play a document being read out loud by ChatGPT. So it's, I don't know, the whole thing's like a couple minutes long. I'll have my little intro for the Idaho case play first, which is a couple minutes, and I want to talk about something in that as well. So I'm just going to play the page that I find very interesting. Again, this whole case has a lot of questions still, and I hope that digging through these documents can help answer some of your guys' questions, because there's a lot of speculation and a lot of, I don't know, rumors and false information circulating in regards to this case in general. And I just really think it's simple in certain levels, and other levels I think it's more complex. But I really think that the universities involved and the prosecutor in this case were the issue when it comes to the transparency, questions being answered, even for the families. Certain families feel like without the trial, with giving him this sweet plea deal. Like, they don't have the answers or the closures that maybe they were hoping to get. So that's pretty much the basis of the discussion. So here's what I want to do. Let me just play this, and then I will pause it as well. So regardless if you think Bryan is guilty, there's some questions left unanswered. Hey, Diva Girl, good to see you. Guys, hit that like button. It's really appreciated.
We believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
So when will they ever release or explain, would they ever have to, now that there's no trial, why they told the public immediately that they were safe, there was no threat to anybody, because this was a targeted attack? Then the prosecutor was quoted as saying, like, that phrase, I think, was misinterpreted, or different people have different definitions of what that phrase targeted mean. And it doesn't necessarily mean a certain victim was targeted. It could have just been the house. So there was a lot of flip-flop all around. Justin says, what a wild ride. I was totally thinking we'd get a trial. Actually not surprised Bryan bailed and hit the plea button. I know. And it just still has a lot of questions for me, though, because the only reason why I say that is, like, yes, I'm actually not surprised, but at the same time, why did it get dragged out so long? And then all of a sudden they were like, okay, yeah, we'll plea, when they were getting ready to do jury selection and all that. I don't know, it's very weird. But people still don't understand why death penalty was allowed to be taken off the table. Why a crime with this severity, again, after we found out of the plea deal and after the sentencing, they found out that we all found out, including some of the families, how many times their child was stabbed. And it was just worse than I think we could have imagined. And the questions that the Goncalves family has, and that Olivia expressed directly to Bryan Kohberger, are things that I think could have maybe been closed up a little bit for them with a trial. And maybe, okay, no problem, Jay, we'll still be chatting. Maybe has something to do with, I don't know. I'm just I'm feeling like they tried. Let me pull up ChatGPT that I was going to read that summarizes some of the statements that were made by people who worked with Bryan at WSU. Those were significant interviews or statements made in these documents that have come out, because it kind of explains a little bit, and maybe this is where I'm getting at, with maybe we can answer some of the questions that people might have. I think that once it came out that people who worked with Bryan at WSU were raising red flags about him, the fact that it was ignored, I think that falls back on the university for not swooping in sooner and kind of maybe even expelling him or kicking him out, whatever you would have called it, for his behavior. So let me just turn this off real quick and read what I'm basically referring to. So what professors and others at WSU said or warned. 1, faculty warning. There was somebody in the faculty warning he might become a predator. One criminology professor warned colleagues that if Kohberger were allowed to get his PhD and go into academia as a professor, we will hear he's harassing, stalking, and essaying his students at whatever university. And that was a quote. She also urged cutting off his funding to remove him from a doctoral program. So like I'm saying, like, with everything that ended up being reported from students and fellow colleagues to the school, he should have been probably living back with his parents when these crimes took place. Like, it should have just been shut down. And it seems like it just kind of escalated. and he was given more and more free reign and no consequences for his actions, basically. Says behavior towards female graduate students. He was described by faculty and students as sexist, creepy, condescending, rude, and belittling behavior towards women. One faculty member told investigators that Kohberger would sometimes enter an office shared by female graduate students and physically block the door. In one such case, a woman said, "I really need to get out of here." 3, stalking and suspected stalking. So what am I getting at with this on the screen and what I'm reading? I'm basically saying that I think that they started walking back this targeted attack once things started kind of really unraveling, that this was something that kind of almost could have been prevented if he was just kicked out of the school. Once he's out of the school, hold on, let's welcome Jay, my good friend and moderator. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Adrian.
Hi, Amber. Thanks for inviting me up.
I'm glad you wanted to join me. I was like, oh, let me just see if he'll hop on, because I know it was kind of short notice.
Yeah, no worries. I thought it would be a great idea to jump on and to share my thoughts, especially about this case, because I have a lot of fresh kind of perceptions and ideas about it. Because I think, like everyone, my views on it have evolved over the years of the whole process, and I think I think I have more questions now than I did when it broke, the week it broke. So I don't think much has been done to answer a lot of the questions we have.
Yeah, and I have so many questions in this case, and there's so much information being thrown at me with every page of these documents that I'm like overwhelmed. And I feel like it's going to take so long to kind of comb through and go through the questions that I don't have anymore. And I guess one of the questions I have that I'm kind of chipping away at understanding more is if the state had as much evidence as they kept claiming for years. I mean, they boasted and the media really like hyped it up. And, I'm not saying that I think he's innocent. I definitely think Kohberger is guilty in that. But I do think that there's a level of secrecy and just, this is what we want you to believe took place and let it be and don't question it. And like, once I get that vibe, I'm like, I don't know. I need to question this. But I guess like one of the questions that a lot of people have is like, if they had such solid evidence, like, I get plea deals, but why not ask for more from him? Like, make it more of like a deal as far as for like the victims and for justice and the truth. And taking off death penalty and not making him have like an elocution of any sort, I think is very soft on the whole horrific crime that this actually was. And we found out that it was much worse like after the plea deal, which also doesn't sit right with me. And I really think that these statements by these professors and other students basically saying like, we're going to have a problem, like if this guy like stays on this campus, the fact that that was never dealt with prior, like, don't you think if they kicked Kohberger out of WSU, there's a chance that he might have just been like, you know what, I got to go back to Pennsylvania. Like, this might not have happened in some way, shape, or form, or am I reaching?
I don't think you're reaching at all. I think there's a good chance that you would have obviously offended, but whether it had have been, in Idaho, I doubt it. You know what I mean? So it does create a what if scenario. I guess it shows you that those people were doing their jobs and were good at what they were doing if they were able to identify so easily that he was a danger. You know what I mean? Doing a better job than possibly, like professionals in their field, rather than just was it professors that said this about him, or was it other people on his course? I think I've lost Amber. Sorry.
I had it muted.
Yeah.
My bad. Students, it was both of them. Like, so students that he was studying with, and then also like colleagues that worked alongside him were both kind of raising alarms. Hold on, let me read a little bit more of what it was saying, like about, so the same faculty member believed he was stalking people. So these are all things that can be sourced in the documents. There was also a report of break-in and at female graduate students' apartments in which perfume and underwear were stolen. That was mentioned in the context of concerns about his behavior. Complaints and meetings, multiple complaints were filed. Reports say 13 formal complaints from faculty, staff, and students about Kohberger's behavior. Instructors had disciplinary meetings about Kohberger's interactions with fellow grad students' behavior and in and out of the classroom, and how he treated faculty, especially women. So this was all kind of documented. Like, so in these files, all this came out that they actually had meetings concerned about Kohberger's behavior, pretty much. Hey, Holly.
It really surprises me that it got that far, because it for some reason in my head it's like I always thought he was just like was really present in lessons and in lectures and stuff, but outside of that just wouldn't say a thing to anyone, wouldn't do a thing to anyone, was completely. But I guess not, you know what I mean? I guess he wasn't as keeping his cards as close to his chest as he thought he was, you know?
Yes. And that's the other thing that's also weird, is that the state has like painted this whole thing like, well, he studied this, so that's why there was no more of his DNA there and all this stuff. But then it's like, but he also left like a trail of all this like alarming behavior at WSU. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And if he was that level of intelligence and of capability, he would know exactly how that behavior would be perceived. You know what I mean? And exactly how that would make him look when the murders start happening. You know, he's making himself a prime suspect. So then it goes to the theory of he wanted to be caught, he wanted to be known, he wanted this, you know what I mean? It's self-destructive.
I do think there's definitely a level of self-destruction with Kohberger, like in what we know, what little we know about him, like as far as the drug use and kind of setting him up for failure.
Absolutely. Like that, knowing that and knowing the type of, like, not obviously in detail, but vaguely what his early years were like. I think obviously not everyone who's had a drug addiction becomes a murderer at all. You know, that's not true at all. But it's the fact that he has that in him to be self-destructive. That usually, a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, drugs are to mask something, maybe to mask something about himself that he didn't like. You know what I mean? Or parts of himself that he didn't like. You know what I mean? I think he was
definitely troubled, like, you know, mentally ill for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
And I think that I think that he was just lucky in the sense, for him, not for everybody else, but for him, that he was able to just keep it together enough to be able to you know, to go to college and to, you know, operate, you know, in his terms would be like to, you know, scope for victims basically and not stick out too sorely, you know.
Right. And then it also like shows, like, while he did kind of carry on with like a regular life and go back to school and all that, like his field of study and studying alongside of the professor who, you know, interviewed BTK, like it's almost like, okay, so you know this whole time that he was just sharpening his skills or sharpening his knowledge into like the desires that he pretty much probably had been like fighting his whole life, I think. I think it would make sense that he would take a drug like H if he had like violent thoughts, to try and suppress violent thoughts, because that stuff, never done it, but like from everything you hear, it just completely obliterates you. So that makes complete sense, you know what I mean? That would be the type of thing you'd want to take. And like later on as well, it's like that, like what you said, studying under the BTK criminologist, that's a very, you know,
that was a planned thing, because BTK would be like a figure that he would like idolize, because BTK targeted women and bound and tortured them. That's his name, you know what I mean? And obviously they found that Kohberger was into bondage and was looking that up. But, just because he didn't do it on the night didn't mean that he didn't think about doing it. There's a good chance that he thought that there were less people in the home and thought that he would have had the ability to do some kind of assault. But in the frenzy of it all, because I think, he makes these plans, and people like that make these plans, but because they are mentally ill, they lose their minds, when they're doing this. And then all that organization, all that discipline, all that planning, all that structure goes out the window very quickly, and they're acting on impulse.
Yeah. And
that's where they get sloppy.
Exactly. And in this case, I think he got sloppy, but reading these files today that I'll play this video for us, it kind of explains maybe a little bit of why the state was like, you know what? Yeah, like we won't even make him say an allocution. Like we're kind of at the mercy of like him signing this plea deal. We want this shut down, because pretty much the topic is going to be how this whole supplemental report is written saying that the evidence refrigerator was at a 60-degree temperature when it was discovered the next day. And there's like blood samples, hair samples, a whole list of stuff we'll kind of go through that was in that fridge. And it was enough of a, oh my gosh, that the person who wrote the supplemental report instantly like called the commander or somebody above them and like told them what happened. And obviously that they have this paper trail explaining like, yeah, so these evidence things, just so you know, it was kept at this temperature. Like, you're not going to convince, well, what we'll do is I'm going to ask ChatGPT, like as we go through and see like what temperature would a piece of hair, follicle hair, need to be kept at to preserve its integrity in an evidence locker. So I'm just going to try and answer my own questions live tonight with you guys about like, would this have really mattered? Could this also be an example of something that the state was like, great, like what is the jury going to think when they hear all this evidence was kind of not really kept at a right temperature? Are they going to think that the samples are compromised, or, evidence is pretty much everything they need, you know what I mean? And if it was compromised, then the whole trial is compromised. So I don't know. This has kind of made me feel like after reading this report, like maybe this kind of explains why they kind of went so easy on Kohberger, like just get him to sign this and shut it down. But I'm curious what you guys will think.
Yeah, I think for me that there is a major element of, you've got to like, I think you've got to remember like that place hadn't had any murders for God knows how long. So the cops who are working there, that isn't, it's not like cops in Philadelphia or in Compton or in like Brooklyn, you know what I mean? It's who are used to dealing with homicides weekly, daily.
Yeah.
Know exactly, they've got it down to a science exactly how they approach all these crime scenes and secure them. And CSI comes down and everything, and they know the whole drill. It's down pat. But obviously for them, it's something that they hadn't dealt with since like 1998 was the last recorded murder. If I'm remembering right. Yeah, like, so all the cops who were on, most of them wouldn't have been on the force then. So, they
were very young.
Yeah, exactly. That I think is the main thing. But then there is another part of me that thinks maybe there's things within the evidence that that don't account for that narrative, and that they're trying to keep that quiet too. And then it brings you back to not to bring it all back to Watts Island, but it is a good example of a case where there's a narrative that doesn't really stand up, that they're trying to protect for the sake of being able to close the case.
Yep. And just like the Watts case, when they carried out evidence in plastic bags instead of paper bags, and all that was seen on by the media. So we knew that they had handled it in a way that once they're on cross-examination, the defense would be like, is that proper procedure to handle evidence that way in a murder? You know what I mean? And of course, the experts are going to say, no, we don't recommend using plastic bags. Just like in this case, it would be, you know, first off, who the lab manager, who's ever in charge of the lab that those samples were in, how did they let the refrigerator, let me just play this so that they can read it.
Town. We've had some bigger incidences. 2007, we had an officer shot and killed, and
there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims.
Weird porn fetishes, but 2 of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls. And those are 2 things that were part of that crime scene. There was some damage around her mouth right here, like somebody had pressed in and try to keep her quiet. For Thompson to say that there was no sexual assault, of course there wasn't. He didn't have enough time. Somebody came up there.
Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What were Kaylee's last words?
It would always be nice to have an answer to everything, but the reality is that we don't always have that luxury.
We hope that they picked the right guy. There's been a lot of weird processes, things that were done in a way that are there to help everybody and help the witnesses, the surviving witnesses. I'm just ready for the normal court process and normal justice. Lay it out, transparency. Everybody gets to see what their evidence is, what our evidence is. And then we let the jury members decide what's going to be real.
Once trial is here, you need to know for certain that they have the right guy, right? We want this to be the right guy.
Studying the case of Bryan Kohberger presents peculiar complications due to the lack of trial and plea deals signed by Kohberger. In true crime, opinions and theories are expressed in an effort to shed light on the truth. Unfortunately for some families in this case, the trial and the court process never came. Instead, Kohberger was given a plea deal, possibly preventing that transparency to ever be shown.
There is a clear and troubling pattern. Families are left feeling unheard, justice is negotiated down through plea deals, and the public is left with unanswered questions.
Okay, hold on. I did want to touch on these photos real quick. This was something I didn't notice, but somebody, I think in Melissa Jade's chat, pointed it out. They're saying that it looks like he's wearing like a skin-colored Band-Aid on his thumb. Did you ever notice that, Jay?
It does look like that. I've never noticed that until you mentioned it. Now I'll look and I can see it. Yeah.
And it's like, why, for one, is this quality of the picture so crappy? But I don't know if that is a skin-colored Band-Aid. I think that's noteworthy. Because a lot of people have been saying oh, these selfies don't mean anything. They don't point towards any of him being guilty. It's I get that, but at the same time, if that's a Band-Aid, I would just like to see this picture actually cleared up to know, I don't know, because I think that's noteworthy.
I think it is. It would be a sign of a struggle, and I think that from oh my god.
Yeah, sorry, no warning there.
I think if there was I think the reason he's taking these photos is because I think in his head he's thinking this is the transformation. You know what I mean? I'm not who I was before I committed these murders. I want to see who I look like now. I think in the past he'd look at himself and he'd see something pathetic that he wasn't impressed with. And now taking these photos, this is just me spitballing, theorizing. I could be completely off, but this is just my feeling is that taking this is to symbolize his new self after the new man that's been after these murders he's done. Like he's impressed with himself now, you know what I mean? And that's to reflect in these photos that he's not this, timid, guy that he used to be. Like he thinks that this is his way of breaking out of his shell, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I think that if he was never caught, I think the next one would have been worse as far as like when Steve says that there was no essay because he got interrupted. Like I think if this continued, then it would end up spiraling into that, like whatever his fantasies were that in the porn he was looking at. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, because I think he's the type of person who gets addicted and fixated with things. And like there's people who can look at like bondage and things and look at it like and have a healthy life and understand it from a kind of a healthy perspective. But anyone who is unhinged like that, you show them stuff like that and it's like pouring gasoline on a flame, you know what I mean? He's obsessed with it and these fantasies to a point, literally it's gotten to a point where he had to do it. He had to do it otherwise, because just looking at it wasn't good enough anymore. It wasn't getting the kick anymore, you know what I mean, for him. And it's that addictive personality coming through again, and destructive. Like I said before, not everyone who has an addictive personality is capable of murder. But in his case, it's certainly that tendency certainly has led him along that path.
Yeah, and I thought this picture was interesting too because it does show like a little wound on his knuckle.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, let me look at the other picture, the one that I just showed, and let me see if you can see it. But his hand's like pointing a different way where like you wouldn't be able to see it. But apparently this is also a photo that he had just taken. And have you ever seen the movie American Psycho?
Yes.
Okay. I think, like, remember when all this stuff came out in the media about his texts and him referring to his mother as mother, and everyone's like, wow, it's very much like Bates Motel and like Psycho, you know what I mean? Like the relationship like with his mother and those in that fantasy world, basically in the movie and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that in addition to like being inspired by Ted Bundy and inspired by like the Psycho movie and like the calling his mother all the time, like the way that people compared that, I think that there's also an element to like him thinking that he's like Christian Bale in American Psycho. Like look at, I don't even need to pull up like the other selfies of him like flexing and stuff, but like this is just one example. There's more than one example of him like flexing. And in chat, Norman Bates, thank you. And the show Bates Motel is like based off of the Norman Bates movie or whatever. I haven't seen it, but I know a lot of people love it. Let me just share. I won't even click too much into it, but have you guys seen American Psycho? Because I just really think, like, look at this. Like when people are like, oh, he wore something so that, blood didn't get all over his clothing and the Dickies outfit. Like, I think that, and look at like his face, like he's doing like the duck lips. You know what I mean? Like
he's very inspired, I think, by this movie, by American Psycho, because I think he does see himself as this kind of suave, kind of old-timey kind of gent at the same time as having this split. Like that's how he thinks of himself. He thinks that he is a gentleman on one hand, but he's also a psycho killer on the other. You know what I mean? And yeah, and also when he made that comment about birthing hips to that woman, if you remember that, like it's so odd. Like that comment is I've always thought was a reference to the movie Dark Shadows, because Johnny Depp's character in the movie is like from like the 1800s and is a vampire and like comes back into the 70s and he's like saying all these things that are like out of time, you know what I mean? So I think maybe he sees himself like that. Like he sees himself as, oh, I'm sophisticated. I'm how a man used to be. These women these days, they don't get me. When really that isn't the case. Like they're put off by him because of how weird he is. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, it's as simple as that. If he was himself or was, you know, had kind of any understanding of how other people interact other than from film, you know, he would have normal, like, rational kind of fluid conversations, but like in relationships. But I think that his entire understanding of interaction, because he's so, I think, socially awkward, is from film. So he's mimicked like film, like with Psycho, Dark Shadows. His entire personality is a construct. He's like, he doesn't have an actual personality. Everything's like he's seen something, identified with it, and wants to be it. Whereas, like, deep down inside, there isn't really anything there. And I think that that's what bothered him the most, more than anything else.
Yeah, I know.
That he really is nothing.
Yeah, and he had to, like, emulate things that he thought, like, would help him be something. Like when he wanted to join the Ranger School, and when he was a rapper, and the kickboxing stuff. It was all, like, him. And even... it turns into this, like, okay, well, I guess I'll just study to be a killer, and I'll just be obsessed with, because, like, this picture right here is very much like the American Psycho movie with the flexing and stuff. But the only thing is, in the movie, he's, like, doing that when he's in the middle of, like, sex with a female, like Kohberger. Like, you're missing some element here in your little, like, fantasy world. Like, no, it was the female problem. Like, here's another picture of him, like, flexing. There was more than one. It's like, dude, and look, it's like he's trying to be American Psycho.
Narrative. Evidence refrigerated.
Okay, so yeah, this reads the narrative of one. So the thing is, there's so many documents. I figured I would just point out interesting stuff that kind of give us something of, you know, something to talk about and sort of explain maybe why things went down the way they did. Again, I will always have questions about the roommate. And when is her interview coming out? Yeah. Where's Dylan's interview?
That's what I'm waiting for. You know, there's so many questions, you know what I mean? And I think you'd think, I mean, I don't want to, like, rush people or anything like that, but, like, if it was me, I'd want to get out as quick as possible, you know what I mean, to get the truth and set it, you know what I mean, and say how it was and what I saw and how it was, so that no speculation can carry on, because the longer you leave it, the more people speculate.
Right. And the longer that we have to wait for it, the longer I'm going to be like, are they, like, redacting a lot of it? Like, if that's the case, like, why? I don't know. It just almost leaves me with more questions. Like, I get, you know, they're releasing stuff, like, slowly, but at the same time, why? You know, and even Steve's family questioned why the body cam of the arrest wasn't shown, like, of Kohberger's arrest.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of things in the case that, like, there's no need for them to be so tricky with it, but they are being, you know, and that just to me says, that, like, there's stuff there that may upset the apple cart, so to speak.
Right. And if WSU handled the situation efficiently and got him off of campus, and because he didn't get officially fired, I don't think, until, like, the day after, like, somewhere in the investigation, like, it was, like, weeks later that he got, like, fired, like, from, like, initial reports and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just, I think that in a way you could argue that the school is to kind of blame for keeping Kohberger around when he could have been at least kicked off campus. Maybe if that was, like, housing for the campus, like, kicked out of there, or at least off campus. I don't get why there was so much weight.
I think there was, like, yeah, I completely agree. I think that that is certainly something that they're trying to not have out there, because obviously I think we both know, everybody knows, that the university is the main source of income for that town. Brings in the majority of its money. So if anything that could harm the university's image potentially harms the town's image, the cops' paychecks and everything. So like that's that's also a very much a strong perception of mine, that like they don't want it out that they could have potentially, could have done more to get rid of him, which they could have done. They knew he was a creep, and you've got a duty of care to protect people on the campus, and they didn't act on that. And there's so many other cases, colleges where there's crimes that are committed, too many to even list. And like, it's known that the administration knew the person was a creep, or had even heard that they'd committed crimes and didn't do anything about it. So I think that's a big thing. There needs to be more accountability from these authorities, these establishments.
And if this went to trial, that maybe would have been like pointed out even more so. Like, yes, this stuff is coming out and people are hearing about what the professors had to say and what students had to say, but it's a lot more different when a university is being mentioned during a trial and kind of being questioned. Is it your policy to leave TAs on your campus and on your payroll or whatever, when you've had reports of sexism from this person, blah, blah, blah. And like, all that obviously would not have looked good for WSU. And it's really, I guess, yes, I'm happy that Kohberger's, found guilty, because I do think he's involved. But I do think that there's, like you said, accountability that still needs to be had in reference to pointing out, like, okay, well, big entities like universities have a lot of pull when it comes to media, when it comes to the judicial. I mean, if we link the Idaho University at least to the district attorney's like donations or vice versa, that there's a close relationship between everybody in Idaho in the Moscow area.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those communities where it's like the people in power all know each other on a first name basis, all live in it. You know what I mean? It's a very close knit. So the power is very centralized there. It's all the people all shake each other's hands there. The university administrators, the dean, the DA, the sheriff, they're all in the same orbit as each other. Their wives all go to dinner with each other, and they all play golf with each other, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, that is the image I have of that place, and many other towns and cities like it in America and across the world.
And something that Steve Jr. Goncalves was trying to point out is there was like another student at Idaho that Thompson was involved in, like getting that shut down with a plea deal as well, which also left that family feeling like that justice wasn't served, etc. And it's like it was another case involving the university and a student, and another case where you just know that they wanted it shut down, and let's make this go away because we need admissions, we need the economy to be booming with students around the town. It's like, I get it, but at the same time, given somebody like Kohberger with the level of crime that this was and massacre that this was, it's just too light on crime.
Yeah,
in this case.
Absolutely. I think, and honestly, like, there's no point in having a university there if the people there don't feel safe. So I never understand these where it's like, in crisis, these institutions, they think it's better to kind of sweep things under the rug, so to speak, right. And that will be better for them in the long run. Like, that's an older style of thinking in this modern world. No, like, that doesn't work anymore. Information always gets out there with what we have, with YouTube, with social media. So if someone has done something that they shouldn't have done, it gets out a lot more than it used to. So, the people in these institutions, no matter what institution they are, universities, churches, whatever, they need to, need to wisen up to the fact that, like, what's done in the dark comes out in the light now. You know what I mean? And I don't get, why would they? The best way to attract students in to a university is by showing them how safe it is, you know what I mean, and showing them that if there's anyone who is a red flag, they do something about it. You know what I mean? Rather than trying to
especially a
wash their hands with
TA,
it.
right? Like somebody in authoritative position. But the problem also, I think, is people probably like professors in the universities are overworked or
Absolutely
they're lazy. Could be a bit of both, maybe, and so they're relying on Kohberger as the TA, and it's like it's almost like they turn a blind eye because, like, oh, who cares? You know, some girls are saying he's creepy. Like, well, I need him to help me with these grades and these tests. You know what I mean?
That's true, exactly. It's pragmatism, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I think as well, like, I don't think he'd be dumb enough to show that side of him to people who are above him in the hierarchy of power. I think people who are above him, he'd kiss their ass and try to show the best side of himself he can to them. And to the people below him and on his level, he'd just treat them like dirt. You know what I mean? Like genuinely, that's how he would operate, I think, without a doubt. So I think the people in power may not have seen that, like, or heard his kind of sexist comments or his kind of creepy kind of, over flirtatious kind of like awkward flirtatious kind of manner.
Yeah, and I'm sure he purposely would only do that around certain girls or whatever.
Yeah.
And for this whole fridge incident, I also was questioning myself, like, okay, like, yes, this is interesting and all, but he still pled guilty. He's still rotting in prison. That's great. Like, even though this evidence could have been compromised, like, he still is behind bars. So that's great. True. But then I also thought, like, well, you know what though? Like, I'm sorry, but as far as your actions always have consequences, and there can always be a lesson learned, and there's always what's done in the dark comes to light eventually. And I think that the problem that I have also with plea deals is, it doesn't really hold anyone accountable in a way. Like I'm not asking for the person who was in charge, like the lab manager here, to get fired because he could have compromised these samples. I'm just simply saying, like, if this went to trial, it kind of gives people a reason to, like, double check and to just be better, because you don't want to be the person on the stand who's being questioned. Like, this person in this lab, in this, they're handling justice. They're handling people's lives in a way. And if this was like your family member and you found out that they left the fridge like at 60 degrees with your family member's case, and things could have been compromised, and they need to shut this down with a plea deal and not go for the death penalty, and that's what that's how your family member's case is going to end. I mean, that's unfortunate. And here, yes, he's still behind bars, but I still think pointing out the checks and balances that don't end up happening in the courtroom, like because of the plea deal, like, I think that it's imperative for true crime community and for people to say, like, whoa, what happened here? Like, why wasn't this kind of handled with more delicacy?
True. I completely agree, and I think that there was probably a perception early on that this wouldn't go to trial amongst the professionals that were dealing with the case, so that there may have been a perception of, oh, we can be a bit lackadaisical here, which is a shame, and I do as well think that it was probably mainly to do with inexperience, that they hadn't had to deal with anything like this, like a massacre like that before.
Yeah.
And it was that, and like you said, though, a trial would have allowed that to be said, you know what I mean, and that whoever did make the error or series of errors, to like you said, you don't want them fired, but you want them to to understand that, like, that can't happen again. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be accountability for people who are in positions of power and positions of authority to do the job, because it's so drastic for justice, for the families, for the victims, that can be delivered. Like, the only way that can be delivered is if all the evidence lines up, and that it can be proven in court if the person wants to dispute the charge. But obviously he didn't.
Exactly. And I don't know if we end up finding out everything about everything listed here, but I'll just let this read it out loud. And hello, Allie. If you guys aren't subbed to Alex Erickson, check her out for sure.
Yeah, it's
you're
always great in Alex's chat and her lives.
100%. There was something else I wanted to say too, but I might remember while I play this. Hold on.
Moderator number 203. On Friday, January 24th at approximately 7:50 hours, I arrived at the Moscow Police Department to start my shift. When I reached my door, I could hear an electronic beeping noise. Upon entering, I determined the noise was an alarm sounding from the evidence refrigerator unit. The digital temperature display read 60 degrees Fahrenheit. When I left work the day before, Thursday, January 23rd, at 1200 hours, there was no alarm sounding. The evidence freezer, which is a separate unit, was not affected. I immediately contacted my supervisor, Capt. Hathaway. Captain Hathaway recommended I transfer the items stored in this refrigerator to our secure outbuilding, where other evidence is kept due to the lower temperatures outside. I turned off the heating units inside this storage area and opened the large garage door to allow the inside temperature to drop quickly. The outside temperature was freezing that morning, and within 10 minutes, the inside temperature dropped below 50 degrees, which is the lowest number on the thermostat. All items were transferred by 0800 ERS. At approximately 12:30 ERS on the same day, Captain Hathaway brought a new 20 cubic feet refrigerator to the outbuilding, which he plugged in and set the temperature. An hour or so later, I checked the temperature of this refrigerator. The thermostat read 40 degrees. I transferred all the items to this refrigerator, where they will be temporarily stored until the primary refrigerator unit is repaired. No DNA extracts were stored in the evidence refrigerator. Those are stored in the evidence freezer. Below is a list of items affected that were being stored in the evidence refrigerator.
Okay, so at first I was like relieved when it says no DNA extracts were stored in the evidence refrigerator. Those are stored in the evidence freezer. And I was like, oh, good. Well, that means that all that was at least safe. But then I thought about the wording, because after all these supplemental reports, they have to like sign that everything they're saying is the truth. Otherwise, they could be charged with perjury. And it is true, I'm sure, that the DNA extracts were stored in the evidence refrigerator, in the freezer, sorry. So that these weren't, these didn't. Basically, I think people think that it means that the DNA wasn't affected, but I think that it's simply saying that the DNA extracts that they had at the time were in the freezer, but that doesn't mean that these swabs and everything on this list wouldn't have been affected.
Of course. Like, any kind of change in atmosphere conditions has an effect. You know what I mean? It has to be kept in specific conditions to preserve it, and any kind of changing of that can affect and compromise it, sure. So like, I think it, what, like you say, I agree, it was deceptive wording to cover their own behinds.
Yeah, and it was like added right at the end where it's like everything pretty much talking about the alarm was going off. Like, of course the refrigerator is going to have an alarm because it's like, it's letting you know, like, this is a problem, so that everything on this list, I mean, blood swabs, I'll go down a little bit more. I didn't have AI read it all because I was just like, that would just be nails on a chalkboard of every little thing, because it reads like every word, including the numbers next to it. But pretty much the blood swabs, I mean, there's like 20 of them. Blood sample, another blood sample, DNA swab, head hair, pubic hair, DNA blood card, nail clippings, and it's giving like right and left nail clippings. Like, it's got more than one person's swabs and all that on here. Oral swabs, like all of them are written. Every hand, mouth, anal, all those swabs were pretty much in that refrigerator. And I mean, it goes on even more. There's another DNA blood card. There's a hand swab, wrist swab, pretty much the swabs on every single victim's like arms, ankles, thighs, everything like that you see on this list was compromised.
Wow.
And there's forearm, more nail clippings. Like I said, it's every single victim's clippings and swabs that they did on their bodies. There's ones that state that this is what's interesting too, is it says DNA swabs. So for it to say that, well, I guess it's still true. Their wording is still true that the DNA extracts that they had at the time. Now this report was in January of this year. So 2025, this happened.
Wow.
That's what I thought too. I was like, what, this must have happened like right away. I'm thinking that the date would said like 2023 or something. But this happened January this year. All these, there's cigarette butts on this too, which, in order to, that also backs up the what I'm trying to say is like, there was stuff on here that DNA could have been extracted from, but I don't know if it can be anymore.
Well, exactly. It degrades over time, so the quality of it, it's not as, you got to get it right away type of thing for it to be as to stand up in court type of thing, because over time it wears and you can dispute it easier.
And then there's so I asked ChatGPT because I'm like, well, maybe 60 degrees is, I knew that it wasn't fine, but I'm like, well, let me just get a clear indication of what these things should be kept at. Now, I only looked up hair samples and blood samples because those were like some of the first ones on the list. And that for hair samples, it says temperature usually kept refrigerated at 39 degrees Fahrenheit if DNA extraction isn't immediate. So I don't know if those pieces of hair had the DNA extracted and that those samples were in the freezer. I don't know. But I do know that anything in that fridge probably couldn't be used again. And it says short-term storage often kept in paper envelopes, not plastic, to avoid mold at temperature dry, at room temp and dry, but if moist, containing tissues like follicle material, refrigeration is preferred. Long-term storage basically says, this says Celsius, minus 80 degrees Celsius. That's talking about freezer. So that stuff was safe in the freezer apparently. But for blood samples, it says that needs to be kept. I don't know why ChatGPT is giving me Celsius. I don't know Celsius.
I don't know Fahrenheit. I never learned it. Too complicated.
Oh my gosh, I'm cracking up because like, when would there be like a panel of like two people that are like trying to read something through and we're like, I don't.
I think there's the difference is like 20 something between Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius, or maybe 30. I don't know. Generally, whenever I see it though, I have a good idea about what that means for me.
It says 4 degrees Celsius for blood samples.
Right. So that's like, it's usually like 20 something Fahrenheit, maybe 30. I don't know. I forget.
Now I can just ask ChatGPT.
Brilliant. Exactly. This is why it's good, because we don't have to have these conundrums.
Exactly. I'm just trying to figure out. Oh, well, I guess it would make sense that it is giving me Celsius since the accent of the robot
is British. Yeah.
That is so funny. Oh, hold on. Either way, it's not going to be 60 degrees. 60 degrees is not ideal.
No, there's no way it's going to be that. Yeah, the difference isn't that significant.
So yeah, it's like 39 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So if the blood was supposed to be at 39 degrees and that other sample was supposed to be at, what was it, 30 something also, this was kept at 60 degrees. I mean, those samples are shot.
Absolutely. So
That's
like
not going to be.
it's nearly half of what it should be. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine Bill Thompson getting that phone call, or like how he found out?
Exactly. It must be, you know, like I can imagine like the questions about how about the integrity of it. I'd just be so frustrated and annoyed. Like, oh my God, how have we done this?
My entire case.
You know what I mean? How have we really dropped the ball on it? That when it really should be one of the most open and shut cases.
Right.
You know what I mean? That like, you know, like short of catching him at the scene of the crime with the knife in his hand. You know what I mean? They had a lot. You know what I mean? But like you said, they messed it up. They bunked it. You know what I mean? Because I think with Watts Island to keep coming back to it, but I think in that one it was willful ignorance and willful incompetence on the side of the police. In this, I just think it was genuine incompetence and lack of experience that caused these kinds of errors, procedural errors. And if these people were trained better and had more resources and experience, and it wouldn't have happened. None of this would have happened. And I think that instigated a kind of almost cover up to the point where they're like, right, we need to make sure that he pleads, so we're going to throw everything we can at this and hope that he bites on it.
Yes, I think so too. And people might not really care then, because they're like, well, he's guilty. Why do I care if if the temperature was off for that refrigerator? But it's like, well, I mean, you should still care, because to have the checks and balances, to know. Oh, that's what I was also going to say is I feel like there's a constant talking point in true crime when plea deals take place that the media likes to say, and it's, well, now they've saved the taxpayers money. And it's like, that's always said over and over. Oh, good. You know, they've saved and it's like, but who gets to dictate really like what we want our tax? Like, what if there were people who were like, but I wanted to see this trial.
Yeah.
I'm a taxpayer and I want to see that, you know, the police are doing everything efficiently. I want to see that, you know, the prosecution and the judge and everything's done in a fair, like, due process. Everything should be transparent for the taxpayers.
Exactly. And they're talking like that's said in the sense they say it saved taxpayers money. Like, don't they realize it costs money to house people in prison?
Right.
Every year, like especially for someone like him. Do you know how much money it will cost to keep him in isolation, all the security he needs, all the nonsense that he's carrying on about? It costs something like 30 grand a year, maybe even more, with all that, with the extra time that the guards take to have to watch him personally, all the other security things that they have to invest in and take care of. So the idea that these things save any kind of money is nonsense. All this stuff is a drop in the water in the United States economy, really. It's in the states' pockets, you know what I mean? Like, this is something that's used, I guess, to try and, I think, make people feel better about a situation that everyone knows really isn't what people want. Like you said, people want to see democracy manifest. People want to see it in motion, and that's what a trial is. And like you said, it allows us to see that everyone's doing what they should be doing and keeping, to the right laws and regulations for an investigation. And people should care if an investigator messes up, because next time there might not be a guy that's as willing to plead guilty as Bryan Kohberger, who may have committed murders and may get off because of by pleading not guilty, and also there being evidential storage and preservation issues. So that's why people should care.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I was like, well, it's still like something that should be discussed, because we put it on blast that they made a mistake handling evidence, because they need to learn that, you can't do that in the justice system. And in certain jobs, there are consequences. And if you're going to skip out on the consequences of it being shown at trial, then I have to kind of put it on blast. And so did the media. I mean, that article I sent you, just in case like Val did show up, just to brush up on what we were talking about, like they've already discussed the topic of that refrigerator. And I just was like, well, let me just look up what these items should be kept at anyways. And plain as day, if this went to trial, that would have been such a issue for the state.
Absolutely. It would have been something that his lawyers would have hounded at and would have gone at consistently, and it would have been all over the media as well. That would have been like the main talking point of the trial. And it really does bother me that we didn't get to see the trial, and because it's been something that it's been a case that like we've all been following really closely for years. And like people say, it's easier that the families don't have to hear about these details. They've already heard all the details. They know,
right?
It's just like obviously when they show pictures and stuff that they get a heads up and they get to leave. We've seen this in with Sarah Boone and that trial. And other trials as well, but like they already know what happened, you know what I mean? So it's like it's hard enough what they're going through. I just wish they had that kind of closure, because it does, I think, create a sense of closure, you know what I mean? Now they're just left wondering, you know what I mean? It's like, was somebody else involved? Was there a bigger picture? You know what I mean? They don't know.
And the other issue with these samples in this refrigerator is all the speculation and rumors going around about Dylan. Could these samples and the integrity of them have cleared her even more so that there wouldn't be any questions and people kind of wondering about, people that the state has described as victims themselves? Unfortunately, she's been dragged and we have a lot of questions. And if those samples were anything to do with clearing her as well, that's unfortunate that they were tampered with.
It is, because only with like this DNA evidence, this proof, which is undisputable proof when it's held up correctly and presented correctly. Like you said, that speculation around Dylan wouldn't exist, you know what I mean? Around anyone else wouldn't exist. That, did somebody let him in? Was he involved with one of the girls? Anything like that. All these kinds of possibilities that fly around people's heads. They wouldn't be there. And like that's the responsibility of all this is firmly on the shoulders of the investigators, who didn't, I think, and I'm not, if you're a professional, especially in that profession, you need to be able to accept criticism, you know what I mean? And be accountable for when you make a mistake. And I think there were way too many mistakes made in this case.
And in that supplemental report, it says that they moved these items to another fridge while the other fridge was being fixed. So I wonder if there's a trail of like that fridge having issues even before they put this stuff in it.
Yeah, and if they'd known that and then they put new things in anyway, that there's questions that need to be asked there. I think anytime there's a bungling, given any kind of, or even if there's a bungling, but it does ultimately lead to a conviction, still, I think there needs to be an inquest. You know what I mean? An inquest as to how these errors were allowed to happen and what we can do to stop them from happening again. Because only with that type of consultation can you avoid things like this and have these like set procedures that you must always follow. And I think obviously they're there, but for whatever reason they weren't being upheld.
Right. So pretty much, since we went through a little bit more of the documents, I want to go through, we kind of started this already, it's a really deep dive of a website, just giving like pictures and media clips of when everything first happened. I think last time we read up until like the vandal alert that was put out at WSU and at Idaho. because they both put out things simultaneously. And we talked about how the university was sharing things to other students and stuff before the families really knew 100% like what had happened specifically to Kaylee. They just didn't even know, like, because they had heard rumors about a gunshot and stuff like that. We read up until here. They do have media clips, so I figured I would just kind of deep dive into some of this, like another little I don't know, flashback, or just kind of remembering things like this right here. I think this is where Maddie and Xana both worked. This was also where we were kind of speculating possibly Brian saw them for the first time.
Yeah.
I still think that theory is pretty accurate, and then they wrote it into that book, but the YouTube community was talking about that well before the book kind of raised that. So I always think, yeah, that is because there was like that vegan meal or whatever that this restaurant had too, and there wasn't a lot of places that had that. That reminds me also of another comparison with the American Psycho. Is in the movie American Psycho, Christian Bale's character is talking about how he likes to take care of himself and he eats like a really strict diet. And I started thinking about Kohberger being vegan and his like strict like OCD like habits around his diet.
The line is like, you can always be thinner, look better. Something isn't that the line from American Psycho? Yeah. And yeah, so like, yeah, exactly. And also like he was a vegan. That's the only place in town that does a vegan meal. I always thought like he was just sitting there, they were over on another table. He's like listening to their conversation and like just like completely like listening to them. They have no idea. He like hears one of their names and then he starts like stalking social media like NK did, and just you know like looking at all the pictures and just stalking them. And I think that like because they looked like the type of girl that back in high school never gave him the time of day. And I think that's a degree of why he wanted to harm women like that.
Yeah. And I also wonder if there was like a level of, because like when I was a bartender and server for so many years, sometimes I would feel like they're taking it as I'm flirting with them, but I'm just doing my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like it's your job to be like friendly and like welcoming and like a host. Like that's kind of what that is. You know what I mean? But I think it's like guys want to believe that. You know what I mean? Like I think like people always can fall into that. I think it's ego. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, she's but like yeah, like anyone with half a brain knows like it's just somebody being nice, trying to get the tips, because it's, you know, like that's how people servers survive in America, is their tips. You know what I mean? It's not the case in other countries, but it is in America. So like that's why you get that service. I think mainly foreigners, when they come to America, like they don't get that. You know what I mean? Like if a waitress is being nice, they're like, "Oh, she loves me." Like, no, she's trying to get tips, you idiot. You know?
Yes, but I wonder if like there was a level of Kohberger, like maybe Maddie smiled or like was just really nice to him, and he's like, "Oh, she likes me."
Absolutely, because he can't read. He couldn't read social cues at all. I think there may be some kind of autism, Asperger's there. You know, I'm not an expert or anything that can diagnose this stuff, but like, yeah, from what I can see, he may well, like, she may well have smiled at him because he was probably stirring them down, and she wanted to just give a friendly smile, like, oh hi, you know, like just to placate him, and like he's saying that, oh, she must love me, we're like destined to be together, you know. Kind of
I really wonder if there was like a loss of reality, or like maybe he just was like infatuated with her, like I think he went upstairs to get to Maddie personally.
Yeah, I do. I think she represents like his idea of an ideal woman, but he's aware that she would never want him. You know what I mean? And that's where the anger comes from. That's where the rage comes from. And like he's like, well, if I can't have you, nobody can. And then that's where that starts, and the sadism and the psychopathy, you know, the psychopathy, you know, and it's a very interesting way how someone like him can go so closely from love to hate, from love to hate. It's almost like it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The two aren't indistinguishable for him.
Yeah,
he loves to hate. I think, like that. I think he would be miserable if she did give him the time of day. He wouldn't know how to deal with it. He wouldn't know how to deal with not being in adversity. You know what I mean? He's like, it's kind of like this kind of weird. I don't know this for sure, but this is just from my perception. It's like he is almost masochistic in a sense. You know what I mean? Like he likes the
to
fact
set him
that
up for failure. Like he knows that. Yeah,
easier. Yeah, he knows what he doesn't have to improve himself in any way or get better in any way. He's just becoming more antisocial, and he thinks that he's deluded himself to think that that's making him a better person. It's not. It was making him more insane. You know what I mean? And less likely to have any kind of real connection, relationship. And I think he deep down knew that. You know what I mean? Like, this goes back to the self-destruction, the sabotage. You know what I mean?
Yep, exactly. And in understanding, the other huge question that a lot of people have is like, why did he let Dylan live, but nobody else? There's an aspect of me that wonders, and I don't know if I fully believe this totally, but it's maybe like, because again, I just wonder, like, what would be the point in taking down all the 4 people and then leaving an eyewitness? I still have a hard time like grasping that, and I'm kind of like trying to work through it. And I wonder if at the Mad Greek, he knew Maddie and he had seen Xana because she worked there also. So when Xana walks in or interrupts, what have you, he knows that she knows like who he is in a way, because even though it's just his eyes, maybe he felt like she knows me enough that like she might be able to describe me or know that I was creepy to Maddie at the Mad Greek when she was working there. And I can't leave her as an eyewitness. Whereas Dylan, they're claiming, the authorities have said that there was no connection even with the surviving roommates and Brian. So maybe since Dylan didn't work at the Mad Greek and couldn't like identify him or have the story of like, well, there was this weird guy that had a job. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's the reason why he let Dylan live, because I'm still having a hard time understanding that. But I wonder if maybe.
I think that's very, very possible, and that it was like he was on a time window situation type thing. Like, he was allowing himself a certain amount of time, and then it's no matter what, I get the hell out of here, no matter what. Like in a bank robbery almost. You know, they always say like, we've got 15 minutes and then we've got to leave, otherwise the cops will be here and everything. We've got to make good our escape, otherwise, like there's a plan there. Like, I always thought that, but now thinking about it, there is a degree of, I think there's a level of sadism. Like, he wanted someone to be alive to see it all. You know what I mean?
Gosh,
and then knowing that he's caused that person trauma and messed them up by making them see all their best friends dead, that would give him some kind of sick power and thrill. And he will be thinking about that all the time.
Yeah, and he probably expected them to have already seen it and called 911 when he goes back to the residence at 9 a.m.
And then he wanted to see the cops, the family crying, and just stand there and just take it all in and enjoy it in a sick way. You know what I mean? And that's his fantasy. And I think that's why he left him.
Or did he go back in the morning thinking he might have dropped the sheath?
True.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So random.
There's so many possibilities, because it's difficult to understand how a guy like his mind works. You know what I mean? Because like, we don't think in these ways. So to try and understand, you've got to read a bunch of like about psychology, about criminology, about other. I'm drawing from things I've heard about other cases of people whose personalities are similar to his. And then I'm thinking like, well, what would they do type of thing? How would they, operate? Because like, I do think like he is a massive sadist. I think that's what draws him more than anything: sadism, cruelty, pain. You know,
I mean, judging by his pornography searches, it pretty much reveals exactly what's going on in his head.
Oh, absolutely. There's no kind of like there's nothing remotely, you know, conventional about anything that he's into.
No, not
or
really.
Healthy, you know.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm thinking, how about I just close it tonight with reading what the Mad Greek had posted about them, and then we will call it an evening. And Sunday we are doing the Watts discussion. I'm pretty sure Scottish Queen is coming back up, but you're more than welcome to join as well, Jay.
Oh, I'll let Scottish Queen do it. She does such a good job with you on panel. I really enjoyed the live you did last week. I thought it was really fun.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I send the invite because you're always welcome to come on.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. So the Mad Greek, now they were also, I don't know if you remember this, when everything kind of went down, like they were very much like didn't want the media in their restaurant, like didn't want to answer questions about anything, and people were like, that's weird, that's weird. But I mean, I guess I kind of understand, you know, like 2 of their workers were killed and, you know, they kind of were given all this attention, but it was kind of like not the type of attention they wanted, I guess.
No.
No, not
really. You get people like us turning up there, you know what I mean, to visit, to try and see the scenes, and they'll always just be constantly asked about Bryan Kohberger, and like it would just become like a macabre, almost true crime kind of monument. And like I get that they wouldn't want that, and that's not what they're trying to build a business on.
Right.
It's a shame though that like you don't realize in these cases the other, you know, things that can be affected by it indirectly. You know what I mean? Like businesses, you know, people's careers. You know, it's these effects are wide reaching.
And it all kind of accumulates to them saying like, okay, let's tear the house down, let's move on, let's you know, find a way to kind of make this plea deal take place.
It is very much let's sweep it under the rug and try and forget about it, and that's not right. That isn't right. They deserve to be remembered. You know what I mean? They were on the cusp of beginning their adult lives. You know what I mean? And it was stolen from them like cruelly. You know, like that should never be forgotten. What happened to them, and it should be allowed to happen again. You know.
Yeah, the Mad Greek closed according to Pointer Lover.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
Oh dear. And Johnny says that he thinks that he might have gone back thinking he dropped it, like maybe where he parked. I think it's possible. I also think that even if he went back there looking for the sheath, he was probably confused, like, wait, what's going on? Like, they haven't discovered Xana laying on the floor in blood?
I think he was very freaked about that fact and confused, you know what I mean? And it just wasn't what he was expecting at all, you know.
And if he was on the phone with his mom on the way over there, I mean, what was that conversation like?
Probably spinning some yarn that he's got on some early morning run, you know.
Right. I don't know. So it says,
or maybe she knew. You know, you
that's
never
what
know.
I mean. But people shut that down quick. Like, no. But it's like, I can't say that for sure.
Mommy dearest,
on that phone
you
call.
never know. I mean, what's this for the guy? Like that you know, there's been many other cases where people have told their parents about it, and the parents know, and the parents are like, "Yeah, turn yourself in." But like, and how many of the ones where they don't say that? You know, they keep their mouths shut.
Right. I don't know. I mean, even look at Gabby Petito case.
Exactly. You know, they knew. So it's all, you know, it's a gamble. You never know. We really never will know. You know, it's.
And they would have been questioned in some way, shape, or form by somebody at trial, possibly. Like, what was that phone call like with Bryan that morning? Did he see? You know what I mean?
And we could make our judgments as to how they respond, whether it's like a very honest kind of response, or if it's like a kind of long-winded kind of umming and erring, you know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. So it says, it is with a broken heart and deep sadness to share with you that we have lost two of our own here at Mad Greek. Xana and Maddie have been servers here for several years and brought so much joy to our restaurant and to all those they encountered. Maddie was also the face behind our social media pages. Oh, that's sad. With this incredible loss, we shut down to process and grieve. Our deepest sympathies go out to all the friends and family of Xana, Maddie, Ethan, and Kaylee. We are a team. We, as a team, offer our support to anyone who needs it at this time. You will be greatly missed. Thank you for being a part of our family and team and for helping me so much over the years. So that's crazy because they were open for years and then now they've shut down.
Yeah, because it's just a shame that like that's happened. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know that they'd been working there for years as well. I thought it was just kind of a recent thing that they picked up doing it. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. There's so many things like this media, one of the first media things to go through. So I'll just save that for next Friday because I think I'm still just going to keep up doing Friday and Sunday nights, Watts. And this case, honestly, I really want to go through the Karen Reed like trials again because
yeah,
I'm not over it.
Neither am I. Like I think honestly, it's such a rabbit hole, and there's still so much to cover it with it. And obviously, we've got Turtle Boy still having his ongoing thing, and there's this potential of the civil suit coming down. So it isn't game over yet. Like we're still still going on. Like the after effects. And did you see that Kelly Denver has resigned? Like she's left.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, basically now, like from the cops and the agents that were involved in that case, they're all either fired, retired, relocated. like none of them are still in their own post after it. You know what I mean? It just, I feel very vindicated. Like for all the people that like demonized her and you know and thought like this one woman couldn't possibly take on the whole Boston, Massachusetts legal system, they were wrong. You know what I mean? Like the people I think saw the situation as it was and saw that this was an underdog, a woman who had all the odds stacked against her, and we rallied behind her, and thankfully she was acquitted. She was vindicated, and I think that's a great example of what true crime can do for the good.
Yes, and she gets vindicated of obviously she's not innocent, but at the same time, who did it? I'm still at the point where I'm like, the first trial we got to see like the Alberts and McCabe's up there. Like I kind of want to rewatch it and see their expressions and body language, and look at it again from a perspective of like, okay, so we know that Karen, 2 trials clears her.
Yeah.
So these people's statements here on the stand, specifically in the first trial I'm referring to, like I want to examine that. The Kelsey, I need to watch. I think Alex Erickson's is she going live on that tomorrow? Let me just check. Because I have been seeing that case, but I don't know a lot about it. But hold on, let me see. No, she's going live on a different case. Or no. Either way, there's active cases right now that I am kind of following, but I'm still just kind of down a few rabbit holes myself with, like I said, this case, Karen Reed, Watts, of course. But we can discuss other cases for sure. Oh, yes. The one from Massachusetts. I think I've heard that discussed on Turtle Boy Missy, and it's good to see you. All right. So anyways, I hope I can see you guys all on Sunday night in chat or whatever. And yeah, again, thank you, Jay, for joining me. You're always welcome, like I said.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's been a great time. Very nice of you to have me up.
No problem. We'll talk soon, and I will see you guys all Sunday night. So thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
you.